Welcome back to another explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we're stepping into a highly poetic, alternative, and honestly completely fascinating spiritual worldview. We're going to unpack a collection of philosophical writings by an author named Zhiqifeng, who outlines the sprawling cosmic ideology known as Lifechanyuan. As always, my goal is to lay out this source material clearly and neutrally, exploring step by step exactly what this philosophy entails.
To really get this philosophy, we've got to start with the problem it claims to solve. Just think about your own routine for a second. Wake up, commute, work, pay the bills, sleep, and repeat. What is the ultimate purpose of all that? That exact feeling of existential dread and sheer exhaustion with the modern world is actually the absolute foundation for the author's worldview. He looks at our daily grind and sees a profound, deep-seated crisis.
Okay, let's dive into this. Zhiqifeng sums up his entire critique of modern society with this incredibly blunt statement. This world must be crazy. He doesn't just think society is a little bit flawed, he frames it as being completely detached from its true spiritual nature, basically operating in a state of absolute madness.
And he actually grounds this bold claim in some really specific grievances that, well, you and I might easily recognize. He points to the utter chaos of modernity. Things like the crushing weight of rising living costs, the systematic destruction of our environment, and even the intense pressure put on kids with endless homework. He argues that humanity has essentially turned into a colony of frantic ants, right? Just scrambling relentlessly after money and material wealth, while our spiritual lives dry up into a complete desert. He views modern society as a chaotic trap that we desperately need to escape.
So if the modern world is a trap, how does Zhiqifeng suggest we look at our existence instead? Well, that brings us to Section 1, Life as a Journey, the one-way visa.
The author constantly uses this metaphor that life is a trip where we've been handed a one-way visa. We aren't permanent residents of Earth, we're literally just travelers passing through. And this brilliantly illustrates how he divides humanity into two camps based on this journey. On one hand, we have the burdened traveler. The text uses these super vivid metaphors here, like a bird that tries to carry too many worms and suddenly can't fly anymore, or a ship completely overloaded with cargo that just sinks straight to the bottom of the river. These are the folks weighed down by worldly desires, wealth, status, material goods. But then, on the other hand, we have the light traveler. This is the person who sheds those worldly attachments to seek spiritual elevation, soaring high above all the chaos like an eagle.
The crucial takeaway here is summed up perfectly in this quote from the text. The heavier the burden, the more bitter the journey. The author asserts that every single ounce of attachment to the material world pretty much guarantees suffering. The more you try to hoard wealth, status, or even traditional social ties, the more agonizing your temporary trip on Earth is going to be.
Now here's the catch. This isn't just some leisurely hike. It's a race against the clock. The source text put a massive emphasis on urgency. The author claims that a heavenly gate for the soul's journey actually temporarily closed around the year 2013. Now, obviously that year has passed, but in the context of the writings, it establishes a high-stakes, almost apocalyptic countdown. It creates this intense narrative that humanity is on a sinking ship and the lifeboats are leaving right now. So, if we need to drop our luggage and catch that last lifeboat, where exactly are we heading? Let's get into Section 2, the Lifechanyuan Sanctuary, the final course.
Let's quickly define this term. Lifechanyuan literally translates to something like life's Zen courtyard. But in the text, it really represents two different things, a physical or communal sanctuary and a highly elevated state of mind. The author describes it as the absolute final earthly classroom for the soul. It's the place you go to unlearn all the madness of the modern world and get yourself prepared for your cosmic departure. And the people who enter this classroom view themselves in a very specific way. Just look at this declaration. We are different, because our minds soar among the stars. Followers of this ideology perceive themselves as awakened beings. While the rest of the world is down in the dirt scrambling for pennies, they see themselves as focused on the grand, cosmic picture, completely detached from the mundane, everyday anxieties.
But to achieve that state, the text outlines some incredibly strict ideological requirements. You have to actively shed that worldly luggage we talked about. This means revering nature and all life, sure, but far more radically, it means abandoning traditional societal structures. The author posits that to be truly free, you have to let go of your attachments to your nation, to traditional religion, and yes, even the traditional nuclear family. Instead, followers are instructed to seek pure spiritual resonance with one another.
And this intense search for spiritual resonance leads us right into Section 3, the power of pure love, the highest vibration.
Because once you strip away the money, the status, and the traditional family contracts, what's actually left to bind people together? For Shufeng, the answer is pure affection, or love. He writes, "Without pure love and affection, the human world is a desert." He views this specific, highly elevated kind of love not just as a fleeting emotion, but as the ultimate spiritual energy. It's the vital water that makes the soul bloom.
And I have to say, his philosophy of love is highly unconventional. The author explicitly frames traditional marriage as a prison, a worldly contract that basically binds and suffocates the soul. Instead, he advocates for a pure affection that completely transcends legal or societal boundaries. In this worldview, experiencing and radiating this unencumbered, joyful love is actually your passport to the higher heavenly realms.
Okay, so we've dropped the luggage, entered the sanctuary, and embraced pure love. But where does the soul actually end up? Let's check out Section 4, Returning to Elysium, the Soul's Ascent.
Now, what's really fascinating here is just how incredibly specific the author is about the cosmos. He lays out this highly structured, time-bound ascent for the soul. At year 0, we have Earth, our current realm of struggle and chaos. If you manage to graduate from the Lifechanyuan classroom, you ascend to the 1,000-year world. Beyond that is an even higher spiritual realm, the 10,000-year world. And finally, ultimate liberation is found in eternity, in places he beautifully calls Elysium or the Fairy Islands.
So what does life actually look like when you get to this ultimate destination? Well, it's pretty much the exact opposite of that modern chaos we discussed at the very beginning of this explainer. The author envisions a utopian, heavenly home where there are absolutely no borders, no nations, and no competing religions. There are no traditional restrictive family units whatsoever. Instead, it's a realm of abundant nature, eternal youth, and just a complete blissful freedom from all human anxiety. It's an eternity of playing, exploring, and pure existence.
But here's the thing. To get there, you have to wake up right now. The text constantly pulls the reader back to the absolute urgency of the present moment, with really dramatic metaphors like this one. When the huge Titanic hits the iceberg, the claws of death have already seized people's lives. The message is crystal clear. If you wait until the disaster is obvious, if you wait until the modern world fully collapses under its own weight, it will be way too late to board the lifeboat.
It's just such a vast, poetic, and highly provocative framework for looking at our existence. We've covered a ton of ground today, right? From the absolute rejection of the modern daily grind all the way to the promise of the Fairy Islands. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought directly inspired by this source material to ponder on your own. If life is truly just a one-way trip, what worldly luggage would you leave behind? Thank you so much for learning with me today, and I'll see you in the next explainer.